Welcome back. Man, that was a great vacation. I was just saying I need to do that more often, but
All
good to see
right.
you, Brett.
This is why we buy lottery tickets, Tom.
And with that, this just dawned on me, like I would still, if I were not doing anything and just being on vacation all the time, like I would still feel this pull or this need to be of service and be purposeful and have some meaning. So even though I love the fantasy of just doing nothing and just enjoying, my days. And I want more of those, but I still feel like I need to have some purpose and meaning in my life. So I would still need to do this type of work and be
Mhm.
helpful to people anyway. So, but maybe
But
one
Tom,
day a week.
you know what we could do is we could flip the scenario upside down and we could do work 2 days and do lots of work and help people for 2 days and then have a 5 day weekend every week.
See, I love that. Then did you say twerk for 2 days?
On my back, I'm getting too old to be twerking,
Work,
but
work, not twerk.
work, not twerk. I ain't 30 no more.
Right. Yeah. We have a wonderful email that someone sent to me, and I think this would be a really good show, and I think this would help out a lot of people who are experiencing some of the similar things. Now, I've tried to condense this and break it down into bite-sized chunks, but I think to do her service, I think I'll just read the majority of the email. I might omit certain elements of it, but I think there's some really good things to unpack, and I think it'll lead to a great show. So
All
if
right.
you're open for that, let's get into it, man.
Sounds
Thank
great.
thank
And
you
we
as
have
always for
permission
sending in.
and we have permission to read it.
Yeah, yeah, it was just
Excellent.
perfect.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so this is from Marcy, and she saw one of my videos on TikTok, and it was helpful and sort of sparked this. And she saw that we were accepting questions and we would work through them, and so she sent me an email. And to kind of culminate the beginning, she really didn't know what to specifically ask, so she gave me a lot of content. And she essentially used to call herself a failure. She felt like her life wasn't where it needed to be. And she says, now I don't think of myself as a failure. I think of myself as a trauma survivor. Well, I like you changing that language, and
Mhm.
I appreciate that. And I think that trauma is peppered throughout her life, and she didn't share specifics on that, but we know how trauma can get in the way of us having the kind of life that we wanna have. But she also considers herself a mental health warrior and a recovering addict. Beautiful.
Awesome. Love
Me too.
that.
She wrote, I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and she has a master's in social work, but her career hasn't really taken off, and that's probably been like 10 years since her graduate work. And her therapist says she has imposter syndrome. So I
Hmm.
think that's something to unpack because a lot of people feel like this. They feel like they're not the right person for the job. They feel like they're not in the right place. They feel like they don't know enough. They don't have enough experience. Why am I providing help or providing this service? That is something that a lot of therapists tend to feel. But she says that it's crippling. Never had the confidence that I can be of help to anyone. I used to think I was just incredibly lazy. I would dissociate often at work. I mean, I'd totally be spaced out, uninterested at the task at hand. Now I know that it's not laziness, but a trauma response. Of course, some things had happened years ago that she's not disclosing, but she's on her healing journey nowadays and really working towards becoming a peers addictions counselor. She also mentioned she has schizoaffective disorder, so I think that can sometimes get in the way. And of course, you have to be on medications to manage that. But she's not working right now, and other than working towards becoming that peers addictions counselor, and has trouble just structuring her day, and knows that that's important, but some days it can be a real challenge. She can do ADLs and things like that, which she mentioned, but she's just by herself, lonely, not feeling that sense of meaning and purpose in her life, and wants to have a partner and a family. But she does have two cats who are her fur babies, which is, we love fur babies. So, mid 30s. So, Marcy, thank you for sharing that. Like I said, a lot of things to unpack, and I think this would be a good episode to maybe talk about some imposter syndrome, trauma responses, getting motivated and staying motivated, building some momentum in your life, and feeling a sense of purpose and meaning in the things that we're doing. So, thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks for writing in. Well, I mean, right out of the gate, let's give a good definition of what imposter syndrome is. It's the feeling that you're not good enough, that you're a fraud, you're a failure, or people are looking at you for certain things and you don't feel like you meet up to those expectations. And that can happen in any regard. And that's how I frame it. Tom, how would you frame it?
No, that is exactly spot on. It's feeling like you're not the right fit for that. You don't feel like you have the skills, the attributes, the experience to perform what it is you're performing. And so
Mhm,
oftentimes we don't work to our full potential
mhm,
because we feel like we're going to fail. We feel like people are going to see us as a
mhm,
fraud, and so we just don't try as hard. It's kind of like that. Is it fear of failure or fear of success? Because with
mhm.
success comes responsibility. Um,
Right.
and so I think maybe some of those things are getting in the way. It's okay to fail. We've talked about that many times because that's the best teacher. And so if we're so scared of failing at something or people seeing us for being fallible, then
Mhm,
you're never going to grow or change. You're going to stay stuck.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. We we learn more in failure than we do in success. And those are the lessons that we really hold dear. Success is great and we remember it, but we don't learn from success. We just we don't learn as much in success as we do in failure. And I always do a lot of generational work. And Gen Xers, we were raised by boomers who kind of we were the feral generation that just kind of did whatever we wanted to, and we learned lots of lessons, right? We
Yeah.
didn't have active parenting, to say the least. And so we made a lot of mistakes and we failed a lot and we learned from it. And I think that really we've got some scars from it, but we're well put together people because for the most part, we have a better self-concept, self-esteem, self-concept because of the lessons we've learned. Now, with every generation, we always say we're going to be different to our kids than we grew up with, right? We're going to do things different. And unfortunately, the Gen X, we got way too involved with our kids, and we didn't want them to make all the mistakes that we made. So we protected them, and we, tried to teach them, don't make the same mistakes I did, and don't do this, and don't do that. And we hovered, and that whole helicopter parent kind of concept, and thusly, our kids did not make the mistakes, and therefore they didn't learn the lessons.
Yeah.
And we see that now with a lot of, fortunately, I have two great kids that are doing great. I mean, I raised them a bit different than I just described, but um, that'd be interesting to hear what they would say about it. But,
Hmm.
um, they are doing well, they're independent, they're successful, they're on their path. But, we have a lot of people our generation that's like, oh, my 25-year-old kid's still living in my basement playing video games all day. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, how did that happen? So there's a lot of that going on, but anyway, the whole concept of we learn more from failures than for success, so you got to go down that path.
You remember because you couldn't just, or people couldn't just call like your parents on the phone. We didn't have cell phones. They had
Right.
to call the house phone, or the
All right.
work phone, but it was hard to get in touch with at work. So they called the house phone, and my parents were always working and they were never home. So we had to have stock phrases to say like, oh, hey, is your mommy or daddy home? Oh, they're in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
I always use that one every time. So they were like, man, people think we're the cleanest motherfuckers out there because we're always in the shower. Every time I call, you're in the shower.
Right, no kidding. That's so funny. So, this imposter syndrome, I always boil it down to when I talk with people about that, I boil it down to self-concept things. And, Why is it that, whoever your employer, your boss, your
Mm.
company, your church, your whatever has trusted you enough to do what they've asked you to do, but you don't have enough trust in yourself, right? So other people are seeing your strengths, benefits, etc., but you can't. So let's take a look at that. Number one. Number two, it's like I said, just building on your self confidence. Um, I mean, that's where I start with all of that imposter syndrome.
Well, when we first get into this field now, in the field of mental health, and that's a broad, spectrum. But getting into the field, of course, like you're new and you have school knowledge and book knowledge, but you haven't had practical experience yet, and so
Mhm.
you've got to gain that, and you've got to work with people. And this
Mhm.
goes for any field out there. We just happen to be in the mental health field, and so is Marcy. So, you're gonna be privy to people, clinicians who are really good and who are spot on, who are great at diagnosing, who are great at providing interventions and treatment, who are great at reading between the lines. And that makes you feel, the comparison is the thief of joy. You start to compare your own skills and your own self to those. Don't worry about any of that because as therapists, look, if we just hold the space for the person and listen to the person, and that's all that you do, that's like fucking amazing. Just
Yeah.
do that. And
You're the
that there's purpose and meaning in that and help that people get probably like 80 to 90% of the time. If you just do that, people will feel like you have helped them.
hmm Most people just want to be heard and they don't want to be interrupted and they don't want people to fix their problems and they don't want the judgment and they don't want the commentary and they don't want all that stuff. They just want to be heard. And you can imagine many people in their lives don't get that anywhere outside of a therapeutic environment. I mean, we say that's the magic of therapy is you have a space where you can say anything in a safe environment with no judgment and, no recourse. And we're not going to hold it over your head when Thanksgiving rolls around and remember when you said kinds of things.
Yeah.
Asterisk, of course, if you're at imminent risk to harm yourself or somebody else or abuse, neglect of a child, then we may have to disclose. But other than those circumstances, whatever you say in a therapeutic environment is confidential.
So,
There's magic in that.
Marcy, if you can be of purpose and be useful to others because that's what you've decided on for your career and for your life because that's your archetype, then go out and do that. Even if you're volunteering, even if you're just going to AA meetings or places where they have, free groups or people gather, whether that has to do with addictions or depression and anxiety or PTSD or whatever, and just be of service and just maybe be a sponsor or something, like just go be helpful to other people. I'm not
Mhm.
saying go to the bar and try to turn people sober, but like
That's
just
not going to turn out well.
no, but if you're just sitting at home and you're not doing anything, then if we don't have a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives, then it's incredibly depressing
Mhm.
because we're not being fulfilled. And so we need to have you
Right.
going out there and doing those things. And don't worry about being motivated to do that. It's not about motivation, it's about momentum. So if you
Mhm.
take one small action today to go put yourself out there, and then you take two small actions tomorrow and you start to build momentum, that's what drives a sense of motivation.
Mhm. Motivation is the crappiest word in the English language. It's so stupid. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anywhere. You know what you should replace? You should never say motivation. You should say discipline. You should
Yeah.
never say motivation. You say plan. You stick to the plan. You make a plan and you stick with it. You don't have to, if you're waiting for motivation, it's like the dodo bird. It ain't coming back. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as motivation. It's
Right.
planning and discipline. And you either do it or you don't.
Yeah. So go out and put yourself out there and be productive, find some sense of purpose and meaning. And if you're working on being an addictions counselor or peer support specialist or whatever that is, then find opportunities in your local community where you can do that, even if it's just volunteer work, because oftentimes volunteer work and sometimes internships can lead to maybe a gig or a
Right.
paid thing.
And
And
if you're in the addictions field, what about an AA or an NA become a sponsor? I mean,
right.
start down those paths,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And it
And
sounds like
no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
it just sounds like she slapped so many labels on herself, and those labels don't define who you are. We have been conditioned to say that those labels define who I am. I'm Tom. I'm a weightlifter. I'm Tom. I'm a therapist. I'm Tom. I'm chubby. I'm Tom. I have
Right,
anxiety. Right? Those are just labels. Those are just those name tags. Hello, my name is Tom. But don't worry about those. You each day have an opportunity to decide on what type of person you're going to be. Look at yourself in the mirror. I'm going to be somebody who's loving and caring and compassionate and somebody who's helpful to others. And as long as I do that, then I've fulfilled my purpose. I find meaning in that every day, whether that's me being a therapist and having a private practice, which I do, or whether that's me helping a neighbor, with something, carrying in the groceries or helping to reset their sprinkler system, or, that's me being of service and being helpful. And as long as I'm doing that, I find purpose and meaning in each day. So you have a task. You have to go find some purpose and meaning in your day, in the things that you're doing, even if it's just for that day. It doesn't have to be this long arc of your life, it can be just be for today.
right. And when we go back to, you said imposter syndrome, we go back to, like I said, self-concept. So, the accrediting body of your graduate school felt that you met the requirements to be a graduate of a social work program. So they have confidence in you. Why don't you have confidence in yourself? Tom and I also went through that accredited social work program, and believe me, it was not easy.
Right.
Talk about 3 years of hell.
Right.
It was not easy. It was difficult. So hey, welcome to the crowd. You made it, right? And you did what a lot of people could not. So celebrate that.
Hmm.
Recognize other people have the confidence in you. So find the confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
And you may not be doing what you want to do now, but that doesn't mean that's a today moment.
Yeah.
So picture yourself, how you want to move in the future, and then what steps do I take to get myself there?
And you're comparing yourself once again to, if you feel like you're not where you wanted to be in your career, I think that's because you're saying where other people are in their career at
Right,
this time, at this age, and with families or, and you're not there. Don't worry about that. They're not on your journey.
right.
You have your own journey. You're the main character in your own story.
Hmm. I mean, do you think Tom and I were like birthed into social workers and we've had this wonderful career? I mean, we've had our own journeys, believe me.
Yeah.
Not pretty sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
we've had our own journeys, believe me.
I do love that, Marcy, that you're reframing things. You mentioned there in the email where you were talking about considering yourself a failure, but you've changed that language to, trauma survivor and mental health warrior. And, and I love changing that language because just changing that language can be so helpful. Instead of like, I have to go to work, I get to go to work,
Right.
you know?
And the concept or the the discipline of neurolinguistics, the power of that, just the I am statements, right?
Yeah.
Instead of all the other, you turn it into I am. I am powerful. I am the master of my own destiny. I am smart. I am talented. I am good at helping people. I am. When you phrase things and do that internal dialogue of I am, your brain believes you. And once your
Yeah.
brain believes you, then it helps with your self-concept and that whole thing of moving forward. So as Tom said, instead of I have to go to work, I get to go to work. Just
Yeah.
that simple change, and people are like, yeah, what does that mean? You would not believe the power that little bit of thing has. I mean, there's a whole
Yeah.
discipline of psychology, neurolinguistics about I am basically.
She did mention later in the email that she has a pretty strong and powerful connection with God and reads the Bible and gets great peace and solace and strength from that. And so I applaud that.
Absolutely.
I think that's a wonderful thing. If you found hope and strength and resilience through religion, then by all means, please utilize that. And here's in line with that. if you pray for patience, God does not give you patience. God gives you opportunities for you to learn patience and cultivate
Yeah,
patience.
careful what you wish for.
Yeah. So if you're using that religion as a strength, I think that that is a wonderful and a beautiful
Absolutely.
thing. You still have to go out and do the action,
Hmm.
you know?
And there's a great niche for you. I get requests all the time for Christian counselors or faith-based counselors, and
Yeah.
it's just not me. I can point people in that direction, and so hey, maybe that's your niche.
I know some amazing Christian counselors and they are extremely helpful. And, they would agree with this. This is a line from the big book in AA, faith without works is dead. So, it's great to have faith and have a strength in a religion, but you need to go out and actually work it, man. You need to go out and take part in your life, like just because you can take care of your showering and teeth brushing and putting on clothes, that's wonderful. That's a good start, but you might have to get uncomfortable. As we said, the failures and the adversity, those things are actually gifts, and we learn the most from that. But you got to go out and, get uncomfortable.
Hmm. For sure.
If you stay comfortable, you stay stagnant.
Hmm.
Now, I'm all about being comfortable. Believe me, we're creatures of comfort, and a little bit of that is really, really good because that's where we can fall back on. That's where we can feel safe. That's when we can recharge. But of course, there's no growth in that. So we have to have a nice balance of being comfortable and then challenging ourselves.
So we're going to go to 2 days a week of getting outside of our comfort zone, and then
Yes.
5 days a week of we're going to flip the script, Tom.
Yeah, let's flip the script. That's perfect.
Hmm.
So a call to action, Marcy, I would encourage you to go out there and to be of service and find some creative ways to do that. And if you are religious, maybe you can start working that, at your local church that you're a part of, your church family.
Yeah, AA, NA. You know, everyone knows that 988 is you call 988 from any phone in the United States and it will get you to a crisis counselor. So
Mhm.
maybe see who your local 988 provider is and maybe volunteer some time with them. Maybe do some training on crisis counseling. And then you can answer the phone.
Don't worry about trying to save lives. You just be a person who holds space for somebody
Hmm.
else. And in
Absolutely.
that, whether you know it or not, is helping them tremendously.
Hmm. Definitely.
Brett, you and I know this. Sometimes we just plant a seed and we never ever get to see it grow and blossom. But sometimes they come back and say that you've helped me so much. And I'm like, shit, I
Hmm.
didn't realize I just did anything. I thought I was actually like beating myself up over what could I have done differently? How could I have helped better? And they're the ones who come back and say, I can't tell you how much, talking with you has helped me. And you're like,
Right.
wow.
Right. They came to 2 or 3 sessions and then, never came back. And then 2 years later, you see them and, oh my God, you were so helpful. Okay. Awesome.
Because you're thinking, man, I really fucked that one up, didn't I?
Right. No kidding.
Yeah.
And I've said this story before is, I've seen so many people, my brain would be so overloaded with the stories and the people and the names and the details. And when I don't see somebody anymore, I delete. I mean, I really go into my brain and delete that whole file. I'll remember your face, I won't remember your name, and I don't remember your story. So I have had hundreds of people that have come up to me years later and say, it was so great. It's great to see you again. And you were so helpful to me. And I'm looking at their face going, I remember your face, but I couldn't tell you one detail of what the heck happened.
Yeah, right.
you know, and I mean, that's my coping skill. I mean, I can't hold all them stories in my head. I just can't do
No, no, there's no way. Yeah.
it. No.
Y-
It sucks though. Now I'm in my career. I want to write a book, but it's like, I don't remember half of that stuff
y-
anymore.
have you ever had this happen where the person looks and has some similarities to another client and you have this whole story about them and what happened, but it's not actually them, it's somebody else.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
you
even when, like, Tom, we're busy and not me, not so much anymore, but um you see so many people a week, and they get in and they start with a story, and you've assumed you've attached that to somebody else, and then halfway through the session, you're like, oh shit, it's not them, it's them. Wait, that never happens, people.
Oh
We're so
shit. Yeah.
professional, we keep everything so straight.
Yeah. I've I've said it, before, and I was, I think the person's spouse may have passed away, and I was thinking about somebody else, and I said, so, what does your wife think about that or something? They're like, you mean my wife who died, 3 years ago? And I was,
What would she be thinking if she
oh
was
yeah.
sitting here right now? What would she be saying? What words of encouragement? That's
Oh, fuck. All right. Yeah, how
uh,
do you get out of that one?
yeah, the dark side of
Yeah. We're
counseling.
not
Yeah.
perfect. Marcy, we're not perfect.
Oh, no.
You just do the best you can. And like I said, if you just hold space and listen to people, that's enough, man.
Hmm. For sure.
You don't have to have the right answers. You don't have to do the right interventions. You don't have to save
Mhm.
the world. And I think the world needs more of people just being able to hold space, whether you agree or disagree with the person,
Mhm.
whether you can validate them or not, just holding space for somebody else. We're lacking that.
Mhm. Definitely. Doing some crisis work that I'm doing now. It's amazing. People will get on the phone and will just verbally vomit like 20 years of trauma. And they feel, and I say, uh-huh, mm-hmm, oh my gosh, oh wow, that's a lot. That's what I do for an hour. And then people are like, you have been so helpful. I can't even believe how much better I feel. And I'm like, thanks. Glad to be here for it.
Yeah. Well, and because it's not about what you said or didn't say, it's about the connection that we
Yeah.
have with the other person. And that's something, if you haven't listened to our previous podcast, I talked, it was a brief one, but I talked about AI and how AI is going to help us in the field in the
Mhm.
future and how you can benefit from it, but also some of the not so great things about AI and social media, technology regarding the field of mental
Mhm.
health. So it's a good one, and I know Brett and I are going to continue the conversation going
Mhm.
about that. But AI, at least as of right now, they cannot hold the space for you, your grief, and your struggles like a human being can.
Right.
Therapist or not, just a human being, that connection that we have with
Yeah.
each other. You can talk to AI, you can doom scroll, AI can give you some positive, uplifting things. It can give you some
Mhm.
techniques to do, but it's not going to be able to be that heart to heart connection. And so, RC, you can provide that.
It's a supportive adjunct to therapy, but it's not a replacement.
Yeah.
It's a good, daily check-in. Hey, AI, chat GBT, give me some words of affirmation that I can, work on today.
Give me a journaling prompt.
Exactly.
Give me a breath work technique.
Yeah.
That's great.
Chat GBT, I'm feeling kind of anxious right now. Yeah, any suggestions?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I hope that that was helpful. Thank you, Marcy, for sending in
Yeah,
your
definitely. Thank you.
story and your comments. And I think we derived some questions from that. And I hope you got some value from that. And I hope you listeners out there got some value from that as well. A pleasure. Please send in your questions. We'll handle just about anything.
Just about anything.
Yeah. I have to throw that out there because I'm sure if we put that out there as a challenge, there'll be some interesting
Right.
things that come. But
Uh-huh. And it's questions at therapyunzipped.com.
that's affirmative. So we'll look forward to hearing from you and talking about you and trying to help you out on the show, which in turn helps out others.
Hmm. So what do you want us to talk about? You want us to talk about AI? You want us to talk about trauma? You want to talk about PTSD, depression, anxiety? What? What do you want us to talk about?
Whatever you're struggling with, you send it in and we'll help tackle it with you. Thank you.
For sure. Thanks.
We hope you guys have a
Um,
fantastic rest of the day and a great weekend.
yeah, absolutely. And Memorial Day.
That's right.
So thank you all for the people that have sacrificed for this country so that we may live in a free society.
Yes. Thank you. We'll honor them. And we'll see you guys next week.
All righty.